For 3 years, my job has been to make other people's love stories look perfect on camera while making sure nobody remembers my face. I slip through 5-star hotels and glass towers with my clipboard and headset, arranging roses I'll never receive and candlelit tables I'll never sit at, then vanish before the first toast is made. That's the rule. Keira Dalton plans the night, but she never belongs to it. Under the soft lighting and champagne laughter, I live on the edges. Always the professional in black, hair pinned back, smile polite and forgettable. It has to be that way. When your father's name is attached to the kind of financial scandal that ruins families, anonymity isn't a preference. It's survival. I changed apartments, cut off old friends, rebuilt my life one flawless event at a time, praying no one would ever look too closely at the girl behind the clipboard. As this story unfolds, you're watching Story Lens TV, where we bring intense, addictive stories to life. If you're already hooked, tap like, hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because tonight's Valentine begins in New York, but it could have happened in any city. I'm resetting votive candles at a rooftop wedding when I hear his name for the first time that day, spoken in a whisper, like a prayer or a curse. Marcus Castellano, the man behind half the anonymous wire transfers that keep my richest clients rich. The ghost in every rumor about bodies that disappear and debts that don't. I've never seen him in person, only in grainy photos where his suit is dark, his tattoos darker, and his eyes look like they could pick a person apart and decide whether they're useful or disposable. According to the stories, he doesn't do Valentine's Day. He doesn't do romance, doesn't do softness, doesn't do anything that might be mistaken for a weakness. So when my assistant rushes over, breathless, and says, "Keira, Castellano's office just called. He wants you to plan a private Valentine's event." For himself, every cell in my body goes cold. Men like him don't suddenly decide they need hearts and roses. Men like Marcus Castellano only celebrate Valentines when someone's about to get marked. That thought hums in the back of my mind the whole subway ride home, vibrating in my ribs like a second heartbeat. By the time I've peeled off my black blazer and kicked my heels into the corner of my tiny hallway, my phone has pinged 6 more times. Calendar invites, NDAs to sign, a wire confirmation for the deposit that makes my throat go dry. Triple my annual rate. For one night, I stand in the middle of my living room, still in my black slacks and camisole, staring at the number on the screen like it might rearrange itself into something sensible if I just blink enough. It doesn't. The amount remains obscene, gleaming back at me like a dare. I should say no. The thought is automatic muscle memory. My whole life for the past 3 years has been one long exercise in risk assessment. Don't answer anonymous numbers. Don't click links you didn't ask for. Don't give interviews, don't go to reunions. Don't get drunk enough to forget that every photo is forever and every stranger might recognize your last name. Don't get anywhere near men like Marcus Castellano. But the wire has already hit my account. And my rent is due. My vendors need deposits. My therapist wants to raise her rates. And the student loans I took out to reinvent myself don't care that my father detonated our name and then pretended not to notice the shrapnel. I toss my phone onto the couch and cross to the window. My apartment is on the 12th floor of a building that was probably glamorous sometime in the 70s and now survives on nostalgia and proximity to the subway. From here I can see the city laid out in blocks of light and shadow, the river a strip of dull silver in the distance. Somewhere out there, high above a different slice of Manhattan, Marcus Castellano is deciding who lives well and who doesn't live at all. I press my forehead to the cool glass. It's just work, I tell my reflection. It's just one night. You control the guest list, the lighting, the flowers. Not him. The woman in the glass looks back at me with my mother's eyes and my father's jawline and an expression that says she doesn't believe me. I peel myself away and sink onto the couch, dragging my laptop onto my knees. If I'm going to bend my entire risk matrix for this man, I might as well know exactly what kind of devil I'm dealing with. His name pulls up pages of results before I finish typing it. Articles that dress crime up in business language, alleged links, suspected interests, a diversified portfolio of hospitality, import-export, and private security. Think pieces about the blurred line between old-world families and new-world corporations. Grainy security photos that catch half of his face as he exits black cars at odd hours. A single tabloid shot in color. Dark hair slicked back, suit so sharp it looks painted on. Throat inked in black lines that crawl up from his collar to his jaw. In every picture, his expression is the same. Calm. Composed. As if the world is a puzzle he's already solved and the rest of us are just watching the pieces click into place 5 minutes too late. I scroll until my eyes burn. Until I've read every rumor about bodies found in the river and construction companies that never seem to lose bids. I tell myself it's due diligence, that any responsible contractor would dig this deep before taking on a client. The truth is uglier. I'm fascinated, horrified, drawn to the outline of this man's life the way you can't help watching footage of a storm swallowing a coastline. One more article, I promise myself. One more photo. The last link is to a charity gala from 2 years ago. The image resolution is high enough that I can make out the details. The slight shadow of stubble along his jaw, the precise line where his ink disappears beneath the collar of his shirt. His hand rests on the back of an empty chair, fingers long and steady, veins visible beneath tanned skin. His eyes, dark, unreadable, are focused on someone outside the frame with a look that feels almost violent in its attention. I snap the laptop shut, heart pounding too fast. It's just work. I whisper again, but my voice doesn't sound like mine. And somewhere, deep in the part of me I've spent 3 years pretending doesn't exist, another voice answers. Then why does it feel like the beginning of something you won't be able to walk away from? If you're already feeling that pull in your chest, that little voice asking what you would do in my place, go ahead and tap like and subscribe so you can follow this all the way to the end. And tell me in the comments, honestly, would you take the job? I don't sleep much that night. By morning, Manhattan is a blur of slate rooftops and steam vents under a pewter sky, and my office looks like a mood board explosion. Fabric swatches fan across the table in gradations of red, from innocent cherry to deep, dangerous wine. My whiteboard is crowded with words. Velvet, glass, blood orchids, NO photos, NDA. I'm halfway through my second espresso when Lila, my assistant, pokes her head through the glass door. "He moved the meeting up," she says without preamble. I look up from my laptop. "Who?" She gives me a look that could wither roses. "Right, because all of our other clients arrive in unmarked black cars with drivers who don't blink." My stomach tightens. "What time?" 40 minutes. His office sent a new address and a car service confirmation. She pops a gum bubble she knows I hate. "You sure you want to do this, Kay?" I straighten a stack of client folders that don't need straightening. "We've already accepted the deposit and signed the NDA. Backing out now would be unprofessional." "Unprofessional," she echoes, rolling the word on her tongue like cheap wine. "That's what we're worried about? Not, I don't know, waking up in the Hudson. Be serious." "Oh, I am." She steps fully into the office and closes the door behind her. "This guy's name? I've heard it in places your corporate brides have never been. You know that, right?" "I do. I also know that work has been slow this season, that one big event can keep my company afloat for months, that 3 years of careful rebuilding can start to crack under the pressure of unpaid invoices and a landlord whose patience is strictly financial." I rest my hands flat on the desk so she won't see them shake. "He's hiring us to plan a party," I say. "Not a hit." Sometimes those are the same thing. I give her a look. She sighs and flops into the chair opposite me. Okay. You're the boss." Her expression softens. "Just text me when you get there, and when you leave. And if he offers you a drink, pretend you're pregnant." Despite myself, I huff out a laugh. That's not how poisoning works. With men like him, that's exactly how it works. They hear pregnant, and suddenly you're made of glass. She doesn't know how close to the bone that hits. How much of my life has been about pretending to be made of glass so no one will tap hard enough to see the cracks underneath. 40 minutes later, I'm in the back of a black SUV gliding through midtown traffic, watching the city rise and fall in reflections on tinted windows. The driver doesn't speak. The radio is off. It's just me and the soft purr of an engine that probably costs more than my annual lease. When we pull up to a tower of black glass that seems to cut a slice out of the low clouds, The first thing I notice is how quiet the street is. It's Manhattan. Nothing is ever truly silent. But the usual chaos feels organized here. Taxis glide by without honking. A woman in a trench coat hurries past with her head down, heels clicking in a rhythm that seems almost rehearsed. The second thing I notice is the man standing just inside the revolving doors. He's not Marcus. I know that instinctively. This man is older, broader around the middle, his suit a shade less perfectly tailored. But his posture, alert, watchful, screams security more than staff. As soon as I step out of the SUV, his eyes are on me. "Ms. Dalton?" he asks. "Yes." He taps something on his phone. "Right this way." Inside, the lobby is a study in restraint. Polished concrete floors, charcoal walls, a single living wall of green that stretches up 2 stories. No art, no framed photographs, nothing to suggest the personality of the man who owns all this. Feels like a waiting room for judgment. We bypass the main elevator bank and head for a smaller set of doors tucked into a recessed alcove. The security man swipes a card, presses his thumb to a scanner, and the doors slide open to reveal an elevator lined in dark wood and brushed steel. "Top floor," he says, not stepping in. "He's expecting you." The doors close before I can ask his name. As we rise, my reflection stares back at me from the elevator's mirrored ceiling. Black blazer, black pants, white silk camisole, hair pulled into a sleek low knot, makeup soft but polished. Every line of me says competent, discreet, unremarkable. I've spent 3 years perfecting this camouflage. The elevator doors whisper open onto a foyer that could be a gallery. White walls, black marble floors, a single sculpture that looks like twisted metal frozen mid-explosion. At the far end, double doors stand closed, each one a slab of tinted glass framed in chrome. "Come in, Ms. Dalton." The voice reaches me before my hand touches the handle. Deep, smooth, carrying easily across the space without being loud. I step inside. The office is enormous. One whole wall is glass, floor to ceiling, offering a view of the city that makes my 12th floor apartment feel like a basement. The furniture is minimal. A black desk that could seat 6, a low leather sofa, a credenza with nothing on it but a decanter of amber liquid and 2 glasses. There isn't a single personal photo, not a framed degree, not even a plant. And behind the desk, leaning back in his chair like a king in a throne he designed himself, is Marcus Castellano. In the photographs, he looked composed. In person, he looks dangerous. His dark hair is slicked back, revealing a strong forehead and the sharp lines of his cheekbones. A shadow of stubble softens his jaw but doesn't blur its precision. The ink I saw in those grainy photos creeps up his neck in intricate black patterns. Geometric shapes, a hint of something like a wing, a line that disappears behind his ear. His suit is midnight blue, the fabric catching the light in subtle shifts. The white of his shirt is knife-bright against the tattoos, his tie a thin, dark slash. His hands rest on the arms of his chair, fingers relaxed but ready. There's a ring on his right hand, heavy in gold, carved with a symbol I don't recognize. But it's his eyes that pin me, deep, dark, assessing. Not in the way men at networking events assess women, calculating desirability, availability, usefulness. His gaze feels like X-ray vision, stripping away every layer of presentation, hunting for something raw. "Mr. Castellano," I say, because my mouth remembers how to be polite even when my spine wants to turn and run. "Thank you for meeting with me." He doesn't stand right away. He just looks at me for a long moment, like he's cataloging something. Then he rises. He's taller than I expected, easily 6'3". The tattoos I saw on his throat continue beneath the open collar of his shirt, disappearing down over his collarbones toward a chest I force my eyes not to follow. There's ink on his hands too, black lines wrapping his fingers, disappearing beneath his cuffs. "Ms. Dalton," he says, extending his hand. His palm is warm when it closes around mine. Firm, not crushing, but there's an awareness of power there that makes me glad I wore the blazer to hide the sudden goosebumps on my arms. "Please," he adds, releasing me. "Sit." I perch on the edge of the leather chair opposite his desk and set my portfolio case in my lap. My fingers move through familiar motions. Unfasten, unfold, slide out the glossy pages that show strangers smiling in rooms I designed. It's almost enough to steady me. I've prepared a range of concepts for your event. I begin. All of them can be customized to your guest list and preferences. Our work is fully confidential, of course. I understand your need for discretion. He leans back, steepling his fingers beneath his chin. Show me. I launch into my pitch. It's easier than thinking about his eyes on me. I talk about dramatic lighting, about velvet-draped walls and mirrored bars, about floral installations that evoke passion without tipping into cliché. I outline security considerations, timing, staff uniforms. My voice finds its rhythm, the one that's closed six-figure contracts and soothed demanding brides at the edge of meltdown. When I pause for breath, I realize something. He hasn't looked at a single page. His gaze is still on me, unwavering. I'm not interested in what's in your portfolio, he says quietly. I'm interested in who you are. The words land in the room like a dropped crystal, sending sharp-edged echoes through my chest. I'm an event coordinator. I say, caught off guard. I own Dalton Events. We specialize in high-net-worth private functions. Our emphasis is on confidentiality and, he smiles. It's not warm. It's not even particularly kind. It's the expression of a man who's just confirmed a theory and finds that more gratifying than surprising. Do you know who your father is, Ms. Dalton? For a second, the room tilts. My brain processes the words but can't reconcile them with the context. I'm sitting in a penthouse office with a man whose name is synonymous with quiet violence, discussing floral arrangements and menu tastings, and he's asking about the one subject I've built my entire new life around avoiding. My father is irrelevant to this meeting, I manage. He tilts his head, studying me. Up close, I can see the tiny scar that cuts through his left eyebrow, the faint nick along his jaw like the shadow of an old blade. I think you should know that I am aware, he says. Before we continue, my fingers tighten around the edges of the portfolio page. I feel the glossy paper bend. This isn't appropriate, I say. If that's an issue for you, I can recommend other planners. Very discreet ones. I'll have my assistant. I start to rise. He doesn't move. He doesn't raise his voice. He just looks at me. Keira. The sound of my first name in his mouth freezes me. Nobody in this city does anything important without me knowing who they are, he says. You changed your last name on your website, but not on your business license. You moved across town, but you kept your old dentist. You paid off your mother's medical bills faster than your income should have allowed. My knees go weak, and I sink back into the chair. He continues, voice calm. Your father, he says, ran a fund that promised miracles and delivered ruin. People who trusted him lost everything. You were 23 when it all came apart. Your mother got sick. You disappeared for a while. Then you reappeared as the quiet woman behind other people's perfect nights. Each fact lands like a card turned face up between us. I'm not going to judge you, he adds, but I am going to require absolute honesty. Can you do that? I swallow. My mouth is dry. You hired me, I say, knowing all of this. Yes. Why? His eyes flicker, some brief emotion glinting and disappearing like light on a blade. Because I can, he says, and there's something in the way he says it that doesn't sound like arrogance. It sounds like confession. The instinct to run is loud. It drums in my ears, curls my fingers into fists against my will. Men like this don't just stumble across names in legal databases. They don't just happen to know the details of your ruined life. If you were me, sitting in that chair, hearing your worst year summarized in a stranger's smooth voice, would you stay? If you haven't already, hit that like button and tell me in the comments what your gut says right now. I don't see, I say carefully, how my father's crimes are relevant to floral budgets. They're not, he says, but they're relevant to understanding why you're here. My laugh comes out brittle. I'm here because you wired a ridiculous amount of money into my account and I like to eat. That's part of it. He studies me, eyes lingering on the fine lines of exhaustion I try to conceal under concealer. But that's not your only option, is it? I think about the emails I ignored this morning, smaller clients, less dramatic paychecks. I think about the landlord's polite reminder about last month's administrative error that delayed my rent payment. I think about being 23 and watching strangers scream outside a courthouse while photographers shouted my last name like it was a curse. "What do you want from me, Mr. Castellano?" I ask, voice low. "For now," he says. "A Valentine's party." His gaze doesn't waver. "And after for now?" I whisper. "The truth," he says simply. Silence stretches between us, thick as velvet. Finally, I exhale. "I can be honest about budgets," I say. "About timelines. About your chances of pulling off whatever you're imagining in 2 weeks. As for the rest..." My throat tightens. "I don't talk about my father." "Then don't," he says. "Not today." He shifts, leaning forward, forearms braced on the desk. The tattoos peek from beneath his cuffs, curling around his wrists like shadows. "Let me be honest first," he says. "I know everything about you because I made sure you could rebuild. Not out of charity. Because your father's collapse created a vacuum my competitors were eager to fill, and I don't like leaving chaos to chance." The word competitors makes my stomach flip. "I cleaned up what he broke," Marcus continues. "Bought certain debts. Reorganized certain portfolios. I moved pieces so that people who might have come after you had better targets. And yes, I made money from it. A lot of money." I gripped the arms of my chair. "You what?" "I paid for your mother's last round of treatments when your father's accounts were frozen," he says, as if he's telling me the weather. "Anonymous transfer. You never wondered why the hospital suddenly offered you a hardship adjustment?" His mouth curls, not quite a smile. "I don't do charity. I do investments." The room feels smaller suddenly. "You invested in me?" I choke out. "In fixing a situation your father made inconvenient." He shrugs one shoulder. "You were collateral damage. I prefer my collateral not to bleed on the floor if I can help it." The words should sting. They do. But beneath the bluntness there's something else. A twisted kind of consideration that knocks me off balance. "So this is guilt," I say. "You hired me because you feel bad." His eyes flash. "I don't feel bad," he says softly. "I feel curious." The honesty of it steals my breath more than any lie could have. "Curious," I repeat. "You had every excuse to disappear," he says. "To change your name completely, move states, take a job you could clock in and out of without thinking. Instead, you built something in the city that hurt you. You put yourself in rooms with the kinds of people who whispered about your father over cocktails 3 years ago. You walked back into the fire and made it serve you. No one has ever framed it like that. Most days, I don't even frame it like that. I just keep moving, one event at a time. One invoice, one vendor negotiation, one carefully controlled breath after another." He watches the confusion cross my face and something shifts in his expression. The edges soften imperceptibly, like he's allowing himself to feel the thing he's been circling around since I walked in. "Your father ruined people," he says. "I used that to my advantage. But you..." His gaze drops briefly to my hands. Steady now on my lap, nails short and neat. "You've spent 3 years trying not to be him. It's unnerving how seen I feel. Why are you telling me this?" Ask. "Why not just keep watching from whatever distance you were watching from before you called my office?" "Because distance stopped being enough." He says it quietly, almost to himself. I sit very still. "What is this event, really?" Ask. "Why Valentine's?" He studies me for a long moment, then looks past me, toward the floor-to-ceiling windows and the pale gray city beyond. "Valentine's," he says, "is when people show you what they value, what they're willing to spend money on, who they're willing to be vulnerable in front of." I have business associates who believe my refusal to participate indicates a weakness. His mouth twists. That I'm incapable of softer things, of loyalty that isn't transactional. They think it makes me predictable. Does it? I ask before I can stop myself. He glances back at me, amused. You tell me, he says. Would you assume a man like me can't love? The word hangs there between us, heavier than any threat. I don't know you, I say. Not yet. Silence again. My pulse thuds in my ears. This event, he continues, voice smoother now, is private. No press. No plus ones I haven't personally approved. It's a demonstration, to certain people, that there is nothing in this city I cannot acquire, protect, or destroy, should I choose. His eyes lock onto mine. Including you, he adds. I should be terrified. I am terrified. But under the fear is another feeling, one I'm ashamed to recognize. A flicker of something like relief, because for 3 years, everything has felt precarious and random. Bills, clients, the constant low-grade dread that someone will Google my old name and decide I'm not worth the trouble. Marcus Castellano is not random. He is terrifyingly deliberate. What exactly? I ask, keeping my voice steady by sheer force of will. Do you expect from me as your planner? For the next 2 weeks, he says. I expect you to do what you do best. Turn nothing into something people will remember for the rest of their lives. And after that, he holds my gaze. I expect you to decide, he says, whether you're going to keep pretending you can live at the edges of other people's stories, or step into one that will never let you disappear again. The room feels too warm. I'm here to coordinate an event, I say. Nothing more. For now, he agrees, and there's something almost gentle in his tone. We'll keep it that way. I'll have my assistant send you the guest list. You send me your first draft proposal by tomorrow night. I'll review it personally. He stands, signaling the meeting is over. I rise on automatic, gathering my portfolio with hands that feel numb. As I reach the doors, his voice stops me. Keira. I turn. He's closer than I realized, having crossed the distance from his desk without a sound. Up close, I can see the tiny variations in ink along his throat, the way one line thickens into a symbol I can't quite parse. His cologne is subtle, smoke and cedar and something clean underneath. What? I manage. He searches my face for a beat that drags. Being near you, he says, is going to make it difficult to remember the lines I draw around certain things. Then maybe you shouldn't have hired me, I say, surprising us both. His mouth curves, not quite a smile, not quite a threat. I told you, he murmurs. I'm not good at resisting things I want. He steps back, giving me space. For your peace of mind, he adds. Understand this. Whatever we become or don't become, I will not let anyone touch you because of me. The certainty in his tone sends a shiver down my spine. I leave the office with my heart in my throat and the distinct feeling that I've just signed something far more binding than an NDA. If you're still with me, if you can feel that line I just crossed without quite meaning to, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens when a man like Marcus decides someone is his. And tell me in the comments, do you believe a promise from a mafia boss means protection or possession? The next 2 weeks blur into a strange, heightened reality. My days are a carousel of vendor meetings, tasting sessions, site visits to Marcus's penthouse. My nights are a carousel of dreams in which inked hands close around my throat. Not to harm, but to claim. Every time I enter his building, I tell myself this is just a job. Every time I leave, my body knows I'm lying. Marcus doesn't attend every meeting. Sometimes he sends an assistant, Adrian, the quiet man from the lobby, with notes scribbled in a precise, angular hand. More often, though, he's there, leaning against a wall, jacket off, sleeves rolled, tattoos on his forearms shifting as he crosses and uncrosses his arms. He never interrupts when I'm presenting, but I can feel his gaze on me like a heat lamp on the back of my neck. He learns quickly. By the end of week 1, he knows I take my coffee black in the morning and with oat milk afternoon. He knows I hum under my breath when I'm deep in problem-solving mode. He knows I tap my pen against my lower lip when a client is asking for something impossible, and I'm trying to find a way to make it happen without telling them they're insane. One afternoon, I arrive to find my favorite pastries from a tiny bakery in Brooklyn already on the table. I blink at the box. I didn't tell you. You posted a photo of them 2 years ago. he says from his spot by the window. Unknown account, private, but whoever you tagged still has it public. You wrote, "If I could live inside this croissant, I would." My cheeks burn. You looked at my old posts. I look at anything that tells me what people value, he says simply. He watches as I take a bite, eyes intent on the way my shoulders drop a fraction with the first taste. It's both unnerving and weirdly intimate, like being observed by a scientist who has decided you're his favorite experiment. Other clients start to notice the change in me long before I do. At a walkthrough for a charity gala, a bride leans in when Lila steps away. "You look different," she says. "Are you seeing someone?" I almost choke on my water. "No," I say too quickly. She laughs. "It's okay. I won't ask who. Just whoever he is, keep him around. You've got this glow." If only she knew that the glow is adrenaline and insomnia and the constant awareness that somewhere in the city, a man whose hands could snap necks is thinking about the color scheme I proposed for his dessert table. Lila is less subtle. "You're jumpy," she says one night as we close the office. "And dreamy. At the same time. It's like watching a cat try to decide if a laser pointer is food or an enemy." "I'm fine," I insist, stuffing sample books into my bag. She leans against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You know I'd support you if you were hooking up with a barista or a yoga instructor or, I don't know, an accountant," she says. "But this guy, he's hot, sure, like annoyingly hot, but he's also the human version of a red flag." "I'm not hooking up with him," I say. "We haven't even." I stop. Her eyebrows climb. "You haven't even what? Kissed? Touched? Admitted you're thinking about kissing and touching?" I slam my bag shut. "He's a client." "Aha. And I'm the Queen of England." I turn off the lights more forcefully than necessary. At night, my dreams stop being abstract flashes of ink and become more specific. I dream of his hands braced on either side of my head as he corners me against a glass wall. Of his mouth grazing my ear, voice rough as he says my name. Of tattooed fingers trailing down my throat to rest over the flutter of my pulse. In the dreams, I'm not afraid. I wake up with my heart racing anyway. One evening, a week before Valentine's, I arrive at his penthouse to find the air different. Sharper. The security team is thicker on the ground. Men in dark suits positioned at corners they usually leave unmanned. Adrian greets me at the elevator. "Everything all right?" I ask, scanning the room for signs of immediate danger. "Routine," he says. "Increased activity around the date." He's being cautious. I'm not sure if that reassures or alarms me. Marcus waits on the terrace. The city spread behind him like a tapestry of light. He's lost the tie, his shirt open at the throat, hair a touch messier than usual, like he's run a hand through it one too many times. The sight hits me in the lungs. "You changed the lighting plan," he says by way of greeting, nodding toward the mock-up on the tablet in my hands. "I adjusted it," I correct, moving closer. "The original concept washed out the skyline. This version lets the city be part of the backdrop." He looks at the rendering, then at me. "Always thinking about the invisible lines," he murmurs. "What?" "Where one thing ends and another begins." His gaze lingers on my mouth. "Where shadow meets light. Where safety meets risk." I swallow. "We need to lock the seating chart tonight," I say, clinging to logistics like a lifeline. "Caterers need final numbers. Also, I have some concerns about your idea of having live fire performers indoors. The insurance." "Keira." There's a warning in the way he says my name. I stop. He steps closer. The night air is cool against the heat radiating from his body. Raindrops from a recent shower cling to the steel railing behind him, catching light like scattered diamonds. "I told myself," he says quietly, "that I would keep this clean, professional, that I owed you that much." "Owed me?" I echo. "For involving you in a world you worked very hard to escape," he says. "For turning you into a message without asking permission." "I can still walk away," I say, though we both know that's not entirely true anymore. Not after deposits and NDAs and my name on hush-hush guest lists. He shakes his head, a small, almost rueful movement. I'm violating every boundary I promised to respect, he says. I know. I don't care. His hand lifts, slow enough that I could step back if I chose to. I don't. His fingers brush my jaw, the heat of his skin startling after the cool air. He traces a line just below my ear, callous thumb grazing the hinge of my jaw like he's sketching a path he's been imagining for weeks. Why are you so obsessed with me? I whisper because pretending I don't see it feels like insulting both of us. His eyes darken. Because you remind me that I'm human, he says. And because I'm falling in love with the idea of you, and that terrifies me. The word love doesn't sound gentle coming from him. It sounds like a loaded gun placed carefully on a table between us. I want to say something cutting, something that would reassert control, make a joke, deflect. But my throat has gone tight, and all my practice scripts, professional, distant, unreachable, have evaporated. Instead, I hear myself ask, the idea of me? For now, he says, the idea is safer than the reality. The idea doesn't bleed when my enemies look for cracks. He lets his hand fall, stepping back like he's giving me space to choose. Tell me to stop, he says. Tell me you want a simple transaction. I'll pay you double, triple, and we'll never have another conversation that isn't about table linens again. I stare at him, at this man who could end people with a sentence, offering me the illusion of choice with eyes that burn like he already knows which way I'll leap. Silence stretches. My heart thuds. Can you actually do that? Ask. Go back to pretending? His jaw tightens. No, he says eventually. But I would try. It's the first time I've heard uncertainty in his voice. It does something to me I don't have words for. Then we're both liars, I say softly. Because I'd pretend to believe you. His mouth curves, and this time there's something almost tender in it. Then we're already in more trouble than I planned, he murmurs. The moment hangs there, charged, until Adrian appears in the doorway with a stack of revised contracts and the spell breaks. We talk about seating charts. We do not talk about the way my skin still tingles where his fingers touched it. And somewhere in the city, as the days before Valentine's tick down, someone else is watching us with an interest that has nothing to do with romance and everything to do with leverage. The first sign is small enough that I could have ignored it. A client cancels, citing unexpected budget cuts. Then another postpones indefinitely. A vendor I've worked with for years suddenly claims he's overbooked and can't honor our contract. It's a bad week, Lila says, flipping through our calendar. People get weird around holidays, but the pattern nags at me. These aren't flaky brides or startups in over their heads. These are solid corporations and old money families who book events a year in advance and treat cancellation fees like tithes. Then the emails start. Short, anonymous, sent from throwaway accounts. Stay away from Castellano while you still can. Some debts don't belong to you. Don't make them yours. Not worth your life, pretty planner. I delete the first one, chalking it up to spam. When the second arrives, I set up a filter. By the fifth, my hands are shaking so badly I have to set my coffee down before I spill it. I don't tell Marcus. It's not pride exactly. It's habit. For 3 years, I've handled every crisis myself. When a caterer bailed an hour before a gala, I rolled up my sleeves and served canapes in borrowed heels. When a florist's truck broke down on the FDR, I rented a van and drove out to salvage what I could. When people whispered my father's name in lobbies, I pretended not to hear. Letting someone else handle my problems, especially someone like Marcus, feels like admitting a kind of defeat I'm not ready for. So I work around the cancellations, shuffle budgets, beg vendors for favors. I answer Lila's questions with half-truths and smile so hard my cheeks ache. The morning the brick comes through our office window, I run out of half-truths. It happens just after 9. Lila is in the kitchen making coffee. I'm at my desk, adjusting the lighting design for the 3rd time this week. The crash is so sudden, so violent, that my brain registers it as a car accident outside before it understands that the glittering rain of glass is inside. I'm on my feet before the brick finishes skidding across the floor. What the? Lila's voice cuts off as she appears in the doorway, eyes wide. Shards of glass glint on my desk, my keyboard, the floor. A small, vicious wind knifes through the broken pane, scattering paper and the faint smell of exhaust into the room. The brick lies at my feet. There's paper taped around it. For a second, I just stare. Don't touch it. Lila breathes, grabbing my arm. We should call. But I'm already kneeling, fingers closing around rough red stone, the edge scraping my palm. I peel the paper away with careful, shaking hands. 3 words, printed in block letters. Last. Warning. Walk. The numbness that follows is almost soothing. We're calling the police, Lila says, voice high. Right now. This is insane. They can't do anything. I hear myself say, the words distant in my own ears. We don't have cameras. No witnesses. They'll file a report and tell us to be careful. Keira, I'll replace the glass. My mind is already cataloging vendors, timelines, whether we can get a contractor on site before the end of the week. It's fine. It is not fine. She grabs my shoulders, forcing me to meet her eyes. This is not a bad Yelp review. This is a brick through your window because you took one job. This is mob movie shit. The word mob makes my stomach clench. I swallow hard. I have to go, I say. You're kidding. There's a menu tasting at 11. My voice steadies as I slip back into professional mode. If we reschedule, we risk throwing off the kitchen's prep schedule. We're already asking them to condense 3 months of planning into one. Stop. She shakes me once. Listen to yourself. You sound like those disaster movies where the scientist keeps saying, it's probably nothing. 5 minutes before the volcano erupts. I pull away gently. Call the building, I say. Have them send someone to board this up. I'll email the landlord. And forward the incident photos to our lawyer. Keira. And don't tell Marcus. The last part slips out before I can stop it. Lila blinks. You're serious. He's already intense enough about security, I say. If he finds out about this, he'll do exactly what needs to be done? She half shouts. Maybe that wouldn't be the worst thing, but I'm already grabbing my bag, my blazer, my keys. Outside, the winter air bites hard. The city moves around me, indifferent. Cabs honk. A bike courier swerves. Somewhere a siren wails. I hail a car and give the driver Marcus's address with steady lips and shaking hands. By the time I step into his penthouse, the numbness has worn off, leaving raw nerves in its place. Adrian takes one look at my face and stiffens. What happened? Nothing, I lie. We're just a little behind schedule. Is Mr. Castellano in the dining room? He says slowly, eyes narrowing. Alone. I force my legs to carry me down the hall. The double doors to the dining room stand open, revealing a long table already set for our tasting. Silverware aligned with military precision, crystal glasses catching morning light, place cards with names that make my pulse jump. Marcus stands at the far end, back to me, hands braced on the table as he studies the layout. Sorry I'm late, I say, proud that my voice doesn't crack. He straightens and turns. His gaze flicks over me in a sweep that feels like a hand. What happened to your hand? He asks immediately. I blink. I'd forgotten about the shallow cut across my palm from the brick. A thin line of dried blood crosses the skin. It's nothing, I say. Paper cut. Paper doesn't do that, he says. He starts toward me. I back up on instinct. He stops, eyes darkening. Keira, he says softly. What happened? The lie bubbles up, automatic. I swallow it. A brick, I admit, through my office window. This morning. The silence that follows is worse than any shout. His jaw locks. His hands curl into fists at his sides, tattoos flexing over tendons. Anyone hurt? He asks. No. Note? Message. I hesitate. His eyes narrow. Yes, I say finally, but it was vague. Just telling me to walk away from you. The air in the room changes. It's as if someone has lowered the temperature 10 degrees and removed half the oxygen. Who else knows? He asks. My assistant. The landlord. Maybe the building manager, depending on how much she told him. Not the police. It isn't a question. They can't do anything, I say. Not really. And I didn't want me to find out, he finishes. I force myself to meet his gaze. I didn't want to make things worse, I say. For my company. For you. For everyone. His laugh is short and sharp, completely without humor. Someone threw a brick through your window and told you to walk away from me, he says. Things are already worse. He pulls his phone from his pocket and fires off a rapid series of messages. Jaw tense. Marcus. He holds up a hand, silencing me. We stand there in taut quiet until Adrian appears in the doorway. Face grim. Yes, boss. Shut her office down, Marcus says without preamble. Today. Boarded, guarded, every camera in the block checked. I want the footage in the next hour. Cross-reference with the list we've already been building. My stomach drops. List. He ignores me. And Adrian, he adds, make it known that anyone who's taken money to pressure her clients has 10 minutes to refund it before I find out who they are. Adrian's mouth twitches. Understood. He disappears as silently as he arrived. I glare at Marcus. You had no right. I had every right. He cuts in, advancing on me. You're under my protection. That means something in this city. I didn't ask. Yes, you did, he snaps. The moment you walked into my office and agreed to put your name on anything associated with mine, you asked. Maybe not consciously, maybe not in words, but you did. I can protect myself. Really? His gaze drops to my hand. How's that working out for you? Shame and anger burn hot in my chest. You're making it worse, I say, voice shaking now. Whoever is doing this, they're going to escalate if you push. They already escalated, he says, stepping closer until I have to tilt my head back to keep his eyes in view. They touched something that belongs to me. I don't belong to you, I whisper. His eyes soften just a fraction. Not yet, he says. Before I can breathe, he reaches for my injured hand. His fingers are gentle as he turns it over, studying the cut. Bathroom, he says to no one in particular, and an instant later Adrian appears again, as if summoned by thought alone. In there. Adrian nods toward a side door. Marcus leads me into a sleek bathroom of gray stone and glass. He pulls a first aid kit from beneath the vanity with the ease of someone who's done this before, snaps it open, and begins cleaning the cut with practiced efficiency. This isn't necessary, I say, wincing as the antiseptic stings. It is, he says, because every time you look at this, I want you to remember something. And what's that? Ask. That someone thought they could scare you, he says quietly, eyes on my hand. And that they were wrong. He wraps a bandage around my palm with surprising care. No one threatens what's mine, he says, tying off the end. I stare at the neat white strip around my skin. I'm not your property, I say. He looks up, eyes very dark. You're not property, he agrees. You're the one person I'd burn this city to the ground for. There's a difference. The conviction in his voice makes my breath catch. Marcus. He straightens, stepping back just enough to give me room. The threats will stop, he says. I'll see to it personally. And if they don't? Ask. Then the people behind them will. There's nothing theatrical in his tone. No bravado. Just a simple statement of fact that sends a chill down my spine. I should walk away. Now, today, before Valentine's, before whatever this is between us solidifies into something I can't break even if I want to. Instead, I look at the bandage on my hand, at the man who put it there, at the city beyond this penthouse that has already taken so much from me, and I hear myself say, okay, then let's make sure your party is worth all this trouble. He smiles then, small and fierce. I knew, he murmurs, that you were the right kind of dangerous. If this were your story, standing here with a bandaged hand and a mafia boss promising to go to war in your name, would you run? Or lean in? Drop a comment and tell me what your heart and your survival instinct are screaming at you right now. For a few days after the brick, the city moves around me like it's underwater. Vendors call with revised quotes. Lila forwards emails. My phone buzzes with reminders I barely remember setting. On the surface, everything continues exactly as it should. Rentals confirmed. Lighting cues locked. The string quartet's last-minute diva demands negotiated down to something tolerable. Underneath, something fundamental has shifted. Clients who'd ghosted me suddenly reappear, very eager to reconnect. Vendors who claimed they were overbooked call to apologize for the misunderstanding. My inbox, which had felt like a slow bleed for weeks, becomes a flood of deference. Word travels fast in this city. Faster, apparently, when Marcus Castellano is the one doing the talking. The day before Valentine's, I'm in my apartment surrounded by garment bags and heel options when the buzzer rings. I glance at the clock. Barely after 10 in the morning. Marcus isn't due until late afternoon for the final walkthrough. I press the intercom. Yes. Package for Dalton Events. A woman's voice says. Needs a signature. I'll be right down. I slip on flats and ride the elevator, rehearsing in my head the curt line I give every courier. No, I can't accept anything that isn't on the manifest. Yes, I really do have to be this neurotic about chain of custody. You'd be surprised what people try to sneak in. The door sticks slightly as I push it open. Old building, older hinges. The air outside is sharp and bright. A woman in a long camel coat stands on the stoop, back to me, as if studying the traffic. I'm Keira, I start. She turns. She isn't carrying a package. She's in her mid-30s. Maybe, with dark hair pulled into a sleek chignon and makeup that looks expensively effortless. Her lipstick is the exact shade of blood on snow. A faint scar cuts through one eyebrow, softened but not erased by time. She wears the kind of heels that say she's willing to run in them if she has to. Hello, Ms. Dalton, she says, smiling like we're old friends. Do you mind if we talk for a minute? My fingers tighten on the edge of the door. I'm not accepting walk-in clients, I say. If you'd like to inquire about. I don't want to book a wedding, she says. I work for Vincent DeLuca. The name hits like cold water. I glance up and down the street. Two men in nondescript jackets lean against a car across the way, not looking at us too hard, which tells me exactly how intently they're watching. I think you should leave, I say. And I think if I walk away right now, she replies calmly, you'll head straight to Castellano and he'll take this as a declaration of war. I'm here to avoid that. My heart is beating too fast. Whatever you think you know, I don't want. You really do, she says softly. You're about to walk into a room tomorrow night where every person is armed in at least 3 ways, and you're the one piece on the board no one understands. That makes you interesting, and dangerous, and very, very alone. She's not wrong. That's the part that scares me the most. 5 minutes, she adds. Inside, if it makes you feel safer. Nothing about this makes me feel safer. But I'm not stupid enough to stand on the sidewalk while we talk about men who make people disappear. I step aside. She glides past me like she owns the place, pausing at the bottom of the stairwell to glance up at the flickering hallway light. You live here? She asks. I do. She lets out a small, almost affectionate huff of disbelief. For someone who spends her nights in penthouses, you're either admirably grounded or pathologically stubborn. Maybe both, I say. She smiles again, sharp and fleeting. In my living room, she shrugs off her coat without waiting to be invited and drapes it over the arm of the couch. Underneath, she's wearing all black, thin turtleneck, tailored trousers, boots that probably hide a weapon. Who are you? Ask. Call me Nadia, she says. I manage certain outreach operations for Mr. DeLuca. Public relations, you might say. Your version of what I do. In a way. Her eyes flick over my scattered shoes, the garment bag on the chair, the open planner on the coffee table. Big night tomorrow. You didn't come here to critique my time management. She folds her hands in her lap, crossing one leg over the other. You're smart, she says. Good. Maybe this won't be a waste of both our time. What do you want, Nadia? She studies me for a long beat, then sighs, as if conceding to a difficult task. Let me start by saying this isn't personal, she says. DeLuca doesn't care who you are as a person, not really. To him, you're leverage. A clean face in dirty water. A fascinating accident. Accident, I repeat. You did not meet Marcus by chance, she says gently, as if breaking bad news to a child. You know that, right? The words prick something raw inside me. I know he looked into my past, I say. I know he involved himself in ways I didn't ask for. I know my father's mess overlaps with his business. And Vincent's, she says. Your father moved money for DeLuca's people, once upon a time. Not often. Not directly. But enough that when he went down, certain lines were traced backward. Certain names were circled. Ice trickles down my spine. You worked for DeLuca, I say slowly. I still do. She scratches an invisible thread on her trousers. After the scandal, there were discussions about whether you might make a useful pressure point, a way to tug on other people's strings. My stomach churns. I had nothing to do with. I know, she says. That's partly why nothing happened. Her gaze sharpens. For a while. What changed? Marcus started paying attention to you, she says. And Vincent started paying attention to that. She lets that sink in. How? I ask, throat dry. Money leaves trails, she says. Anonymous or not. Vincent has people who watch for unusual patterns. Someone funneled a small fortune into making sure your mother stayed comfortable. Your bills got paid. Your credit score didn't tank. Someone made phone calls when landlords hesitated. Someone leaned on a bank officer who questioned a new business loan for a woman with your last name. Her mouth curves. We may be monsters, Ms. Dalton, but we're thorough monsters. And you trace that, I say, voice barely audible, back to Marcus. We did, she confirms. At first, Vincent thought it was cleanup, making sure your father's mess didn't splash on his shoes. But then 2 years went by and Marcus never touched you, never spoke to you, never even set foot in the circles you were slowly climbing into. She tilts her head. And then, suddenly, he did. My heart hammers against my ribs. The gala, I whisper. This Valentine's party. He hired me. Because he wanted to see, she says, whether the thing he'd kept at a distance would survive up close. A bitter laugh escapes me. So I'm a test, I say. An experiment between two men who treat human lives like pieces on a board. That's one way to look at it. Is there another? She considers. You're also a mirror, she says at last. For Marcus, at least. A way to see who he becomes around something he can't control. Why are you telling me this? Ask. If I'm such convenient leverage, why warn me? Because Vincent is planning to use you tomorrow night whether you know it or not, she says frankly. And people who don't know they're in danger tend to react unpredictably. That's bad for everyone. She shifts forward, forearms resting on her knees. He intends to expose what your father did, she continues, and how deep our hands were in it. He intends to point out, in front of every important person in that room, that the only reason you're standing there in your perfect dress handing out smiles is because men like him and Marcus cleaned up the wreckage, even as we profited from it. My skin goes cold. He wants you humiliated, she says. Wants Marcus angry. Wants to prove that all this. She gestures around, meaning not just my apartment but my business, my composure, my carefully tiled life, is built on machinery you never even saw, machines we designed. And you're what? Hoping I'll what? Refuse to show up. My laugh is brittle. You think Marcus will just shrug and let you move your pieces if I don't attend his own party? I think Marcus is already expecting Vincent to do something, she says. I'm giving you the courtesy of not being blindsided. Courtesy, I repeat, from a man who helped destroy my family. She doesn't flinch. You're angry, she says. Good. Hold on to that tomorrow. It'll make it harder for anyone to paint you as a victim. My eyes sting. What do you get out of this, Nadia? Ask. She hesitates, and for the first time her polished facade cracks. I know what it feels like, she says quietly. To have your life decided in rooms you weren't invited into. To be the one thing two powerful men use to measure each other. Her mouth tightens. No one gave me a warning shot. She rises, shrugging back into her coat. You can tell Marcus I came, she adds. Or not. He'll find out one way or another. I stand too, legs unsteady. If he asks, I say, what should I tell him you said? She pauses at the door, hand on the knob. Tell him Vincent doesn't believe he has the stomach for this, she says. For choosing one fragile human over the appearance of invulnerability. She smiles, lips like a cut. And that tomorrow night he intends to prove it. The door closes behind her with a soft click. I stand in the quiet for a long time, heart pounding, nausea crawling up the back of my throat. Then I move on autopilot, locking the deadbolt, checking the chain, closing the curtains even though it's broad daylight. My phone sits on the coffee table, black screen like a tiny, waiting void. I stare at it until my vision blurs. Then I pick it up and call the only person in the city more terrifying than the men threatening me. He answers on the first ring. Keira. My composure fractures at the sound of his voice. Can you? My throat closes. Where are you? He asks instantly. Home. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He hangs up before I can protest. 15 minutes feels like 15 years. By the time the knock comes, I'm curled on the couch under a throw blanket I don't remember pulling over myself. Knees drawn up, phone gripped in both hands. My eyes burn, the way they did the day my father's mugshot exploded across the news anchor's smiles. I force myself up, feet cold on the hardwood. I don't check the peephole. I know the weight of his presence on the other side. The moment the door opens, he's there, filling the frame, suit jacket thrown on over a black sweater, hair mussed like he dragged his hands through it on the way over. Two men hover down the hall, pretending not to watch. His gaze schemes my face, my posture, the faint tremble in my hands. Inside, he says gently. I step back and he enters. The room suddenly feels too small, the air too charged. What happened? He asks. A woman, I say. She said she works for DeLuca. His eyes go flat. What did she tell you? I take a shaky breath and repeat Nadia's words, as best I can remember them. The part about my father, about their involvement, about the anonymous money, the decisions made in rooms I never entered, about tomorrow night. By the time I finish, my voice is raw. He listens without interrupting, without pacing, without theatrics. When I'm done, he exhales slowly, like someone letting smoke out of lungs that have been holding it too long. He's accelerating, Marcus says. I expected something. But this, he shakes his head once, sharp. He's more desperate than I thought. Is it true? I whisper. He looks at me. What she said about my father, I clarify. About DeLuca. About you. He walks to the window and stares out at the street for a long moment, the muscles in his back taut beneath his sweater. He looks like the man in the photographs again. Untouchable, marble-hard, his silhouette cut against the skyline like a warning. Yes, he says finally. I sink back onto the couch. I kept you out of the worst of it, he continues, as much as I could without drawing attention. But the money, what your father moved, what he promised, what he stole, it flowed through hands like mine and Vincent's. Washing, stacking, multiplying. When he fell, we had a choice. Let the pieces fall where they may, or catch the ones that would break us too. And you chose self-preservation. I chose control, he says. Self-preservation was a bonus. I laugh once, harsh. Was I a bonus too? Ask. A side project to assuage your conscience? His shoulders stiffen. Do you really think I have a conscience that needs assuaging? He asks quietly. I don't actually. That might be the problem. He turns, leaning against the windowsill, arms folded. You were a loose thread, he says. Someone whose pain didn't benefit me. That made you either a liability or a responsibility. Responsibility, I echo. Yes. He meets my gaze. And I don't take my responsibilities lightly. Tears burn behind my eyes, furious and uninvited. So tomorrow, I say, DeLuca is going to stand in front of everyone and tell them the truth, that I'm standing in your penthouse because men like you and him decided I should be allowed to stay upright while everyone else drowned. Not exactly the wording I choose, but yes, he says. He'll try. He'll succeed. I say, because it's true. That's what hurts the most. Not the sins themselves, sins I didn't commit, but the fact that my life is balanced on the same crooked foundation as the men I've spent years hating. Marcus pushes away from the window and crosses the room in 3 quick strides. Before I can step back, his hands are on my shoulders, warm and solid. Look at me, he says. I do. There will be people in that room tomorrow who are waiting for a reason to doubt me, he says. People who profit if I appear weak, sentimental, distracted. Vincent will try to use you to paint that picture. And you're going to let him? I demand. Use me as your line in the sand? No, he says. I'm going to use him. His thumbs stroke once along my collarbones. An absent, grounding gesture. He thinks I won't choose you over the appearance of invulnerability, he says. He thinks love, whatever I'm capable of, makes me stupid. He's wrong. My breath catches. Love. He doesn't flinch. I am not going to pretend I feel less than I do, he says calmly. Not in front of him. Not in front of anyone. The room tilts again, but differently this time. Marcus. He dips his head, resting his forehead briefly against mine. The contact is shockingly intimate, absent of seduction. I won't let him destroy you with this, he murmurs. He can't, because I won't allow it. My chest constricts. And if stopping him destroys you? If I let him touch you, he says, I've already destroyed myself. The simplicity of it undoes me more than any grand declaration. A sob claws up my throat. I clamp my lips together to stop it. It spills out anyway, ragged and humiliating. He pulls me into his arms without hesitation. For a second, I go rigid. Then the dam breaks. I've cried before, in the dark anonymity of my bathroom, in cheap therapist chairs, in empty subway cars at 2 in the morning. But I've never cried like this. In someone's arms, against a chest that rises and falls in steady rhythm, with hands stroking slow circles between my shoulder blades. He doesn't say it's okay. He doesn't tell me to calm down. He just holds me, solid as the city below us, while 3 years of fear and shame and carefully folded anger shake loose. When the sobs finally taper into hiccuping breaths, my throat feels scraped raw. I'm a mess, I mutter into his sweater. He makes a low sound that might almost be a laugh. Not to me, he says. He eases us down onto the couch, pulling me with him until my head rests on his chest and his arm curves around my shoulders. I'm acutely aware of the power coiled in his body, the steady thump of his heart under my ear, the faint scent of his cologne threaded with something uniquely him. I should go, I say weakly. You have things to plan, or threaten, or... You're not going anywhere tonight, he says. Adrian has patrols doubled. No one gets near this building without me knowing. And you? I'm staying. The certainty in his tone brooks no argument. Nothing's going to happen tonight, I protest. The gala's tomorrow. There's no strategic advantage. The advantage, he says, is that I sleep, which I won't do unless I know you're not alone. Something in me softens at that. The idea that this man, this lethal, calculating man, loses sleep over my vulnerability feels unreasonably, dangerously comforting. Just so we're clear, I say, because humor is the only thing keeping me from drowning again. This isn't some convoluted seduction ploy where you pretend to be noble and then magically end up in my bed. If I wanted to end up in your bed, he says dryly, I wouldn't need ploys. Heat flares under my skin. But that's not what tonight is, he adds, voice lowering. Tonight, you're going to try to sleep, and I'm going to sit in that chair. He nods toward the accent chair by the window, and answer emails and terrify my enemies from a safe distance. Sounds romantic, I say. It is, he says. In my world, it's ridiculous. It's also somehow enough. We order takeout, no fancy chef-prepared meal, just greasy lo mein and dumplings that arrive in plain white boxes. He eats with efficient precision, chopsticks moving in sharp, neat motions. I pick at mine, appetite dulled by nerves, then give up and curl my feet under me on the couch. After dinner, he drapes the throw blanket back over my legs and settles into the chair by the window, laptop open. The glow from the screen paints his face in cool light, emphasizing the angles, the ink on his throat, the faint lines at the corners of his eyes. Tell me about him, I say suddenly. He glances over. Who? Your father. His expression shifts just slightly. You're not the only one whose life got decided in rooms they didn't choose, I say. If we're walking into whatever tomorrow is together, I'd like to know what ghosts are in the room with us. He considers me for a long beat, then closes the laptop with a soft click. My father was a butcher, he says. In Naples, originally. The literal kind. Meat, bones, a small stall in a crowded market. He worked with his hands. Hurt them, too. By the time I was old enough to carry the heavier cuts, his knuckles were already swollen. He smelled like iron and salt and smoke. The words surprised me. I'd expected talk of empires and dynasties, not blood on chopping blocks. He was also, Marcus continues, very good at deciding what things were worth, how much a cut of meat should cost, how much credit he could extend to a struggling family, how much interest to charge a man who'd borrowed more than he could repay. That skill translated easily. When certain people approached him, he leans back, gaze distant. We came to New York when I was 13, he says. He wanted more space, more customers, more possibility. Within a year, he was doing side deals for people whose names I didn't know yet, moving product that wasn't technically on his shelves. Drugs? Ask. Sometimes, he says. Weapons. Cash. Favors. He told himself it was temporary. That once he'd built enough cushion for my mother and me, he'd step back. He smiles, bitter. Men like that never step back. They just step sideways into darker rooms. What happened? I ask softly. He died, Marcus says. Heart attack in the back room, knife still in his hand. Left me a butcher shop, a handful of debts, and a reputation that meant certain people knocked on our door with condolences and opportunities. And you took them. I did. His gaze meets mine. Because the alternative was letting men like Vincent carve up what my father built and use my mother as leverage. I grew up in the back room of a shop, Keira. I learned young that if you're going to have blood on your hands anyway, you might as well decide whose it is. The bluntness of it steals my breath. Do you regret it? Ask. Regret is useless, he says. I have calculations I do differently, knowing what I know now. But the path. He shakes his head. Once you step through certain doors, there's no going back. Only forward. And me? I ask quietly. What am I in those calculations? He studies me for a long moment. An anomaly, he says. An equation that doesn't balance no matter how many ways I run it, but that I'm unwilling to discard. It's not a love poem, but from him it might as well be. Later, in the thinning hours of the night, he talks more. About his mother, who still lights candles for a son who handles sin like a trade. About the first time he saw someone die because of a decision he made. About the line he drew early about not touching children, not using families as currency. You were the exception, he says quietly. I blink. What? Your father's fall hurt people, he says. Families. Children. I could have stepped in sooner. Stopped some of it. I chose not to because the chaos served me. I told myself you were old enough to fend for yourself. That you'd land on your feet. I didn't, I say. Not at first. I know, he says. I watched you fall. That's one of the ghosts in the room tomorrow. At some point, exhaustion drags me under. I wake once to the soft clack of keys, the rustle of paper, the low murmur of his voice in another language. The lamp by the window stays on all night, a small, stubborn circle of light. When I open my eyes again, pale dawn is seeping around the edges of the curtains. My neck aches pleasantly from sleeping in a cramped position. The blanket has been tugged up around my shoulders. Marcus is still in the chair, head tipped back, eyes closed. For the first time since I've known him, he looks vulnerable. Not weak, never weak, but human. There are faint shadows under his eyes, a slackness around his mouth that speaks of bone-deep fatigue. Something in my chest twists. Falling for him wasn't a dramatic slide. It was a slow accumulation of moments like this, like sand piling grain by grain until the shape is undeniable. This is the moment I admit it to myself. I'm in love with him, terrified, furious, uneasy with the power imbalance and haunted by the ways he's manipulated my life like a chessboard. But in love nonetheless. If you've ever loved someone who scares you as much as they comfort you, you know this feeling. If you're still here in the story, take a second to hit like. It tells me you're willing to ride this dangerous line with me all the way to the end. Valentine's arrives like a held breath finally released. By evening, his penthouse is unrecognizable. Velvet drapes spill from the ceiling, catching the low, warm light. Hundreds of candles flicker behind glass, their reflections doubling in mirror panels and polished silver. Flowers, dark red roses, black calla lilies, white orchids, coil up pillars and spill from urns like captured storms. Staff in black circulate with trays of champagne, moving along invisible paths we've drilled until my feet ached. A string quartet plays something lush and slow in the corner, notes weaving through the low murmur of voices. 50 of Manhattan's most dangerous people drift through the space like predators at a watering hole. Politicians whose public smiles hide private balances. CEOs whose empires rose on quietly broken backs. Men and women whose names never appear in print, whose power hums just beneath the surface of every transaction in this city. I move among them like a shadow, checking details, adjusting a candle here, a napkin there. On the surface, I'm the picture of professional calm. Inside, my nerves are live wires. I can feel Marcus without looking. He occupies the center of the room the way gravity occupies space. Inescapable, unseen but profoundly felt. Dressed in a tuxedo so sharply cut it might as well be armor. Tattoos peeking above his collar. He greets guests with measured handshakes and cool half-smiles. Every so often, his gaze finds mine across the room. A brief flicker, a silent check-in. You okay? Not really. Keep moving. I do. Time becomes slippery, measured not in minutes but in courses. Appetizers. First toast. Second course. The band shifts to a more modern tempo. Laughter rises and falls like tides. I'm overseeing a minor crisis with the dessert table. One of the sugar sculptures cracked during transport, and my pastry chef is on the verge of tears when a hand closes around my elbow. Come with me, Marcus says quietly. I don't argue. He guides me through a side door into his private study, closing it behind us with a soft click. The sudden quiet is jarring after the layered noise outside. What's wrong? Ask. Nothing yet, he says. That's the problem. He steps closer, tension radiating off him in waves. DeLuca? I guess. He's late, Marcus says. He's never late. Maybe he changed his mind. I say, knowing even as I say it that this is wishful thinking. Men like Vincent don't change their minds, he replies. They change their tactics. He studies my face. Are you sure you're up for this? He asks. I meant what I said last night. You can walk out that door, get in a car I provide, and be on a flight to anywhere by midnight. And you? Ask. I'll handle what's left, he says. Without you as a pawn. It's tempting. God, it's tempting. To imagine a life where I'm not at the center of some high-stakes game, where my father's sins don't echo in every room I enter. But that's a fantasy. Even if I ran, the story would follow. It would just be told without me there to shape it. I'm tired of leaving rooms other people are using my name in, I say. If this is going to blow up, I want to be here when it does. Something like pride flickers across his face. In that case, he says, voice lower, there's something I need you to hear before we go back out there. He closes the distance between us until my back brushes the edge of his desk. His hand lifts, fingers tracing the curve of my jaw, the line behind my ear. I tilt my face up, breath catching. If I had any sense, he murmurs. I'd wait until all this is over. Since when do you wait to do anything? I whisper. Exactly. His mouth crushes onto mine. The kiss isn't gentle. It's not exploratory or hesitant. It's a stake driven into the ground, a line carved into stone. His hands bracket my jaw, thumbs pressing lightly at the hinge, as if he's reminding me to keep breathing. I clutch at his jacket, fingers digging into expensive fabric. The world narrows to the heat of his mouth, the scrape of stubble against my skin, the quiet sound he makes when I open to him without restraint. All the weeks of tension, of careful distance and obeyed boundaries, shatter in that moment. There is only this impossible man pressing me back against his desk, kissing me like he's been starving and just found water. When he pulls back, we're both breathing hard. His forehead rests against mine, eyes closed. You're my Valentine, he says, voice rough. Whatever happens tonight, remember that I'm choosing you. My chest tightens. I didn't ask to be chosen, I say, though the protest rings hollow even to my own ears. I know, he says. I'm asking you to let me anyway. It's not fair. None of this is fair. But fairness has never been part of our equation. Okay, I whisper. Then don't make me regret it. He kisses me once more, softer this time, then straightens, mask sliding back into place. Stay near the bar when we go back in, he says. My people will be around you. If anything feels wrong, you don't wait, just move. They'll handle it. What about you? Ask. I'll be where he expects me to be, he says. Center of the room. He opens the door. The noise hits us like a wave. The band has shifted again. Laughter is louder. Alcohol has taken the edges off people's caution. And then, like someone dimming a switch, the energy changes. Conversations pause mid-sentence. Heads turn toward the entrance hallway. The staff by the bar straightens subtly. Guards shift into new positions, as if choreographed. Vincent DeLuca has arrived. I see him first in reflection, his figure mirrored in the polished chrome of a column. Then I turn, and he's there at the top of the steps leading down into the main room. He's shorter than Marcus, barrel-chested where Marcus is lean, with salt and pepper hair slicked back from a face that might once have been handsome before life thickened it. His suit is dark, his tie blood-red. Two men flank him. Nadia is one of them, expression unreadable. He smiles, but there's no warmth in it. Marcus, he booms, his voice carrying easily. You throw a good party for a man who claims he's incapable of sentiment. Murmured chuckles ripple through the crowd. Marcus steps forward to greet him, every inch the gracious host. Vincent, he says, I was beginning to think you'd lost your nerve. DeLuca laughs, loud and exaggerated. Lose my nerve? He repeats. Not when there's so much to celebrate. He descends the steps, clapping a few shoulders on the way down, soaking up the attention. He doesn't look at me. Not yet. I retreat toward the bar, as instructed, heart hammering. Two of Marcus's men I recognize, Adrian and a tall, silent one named Rico, position themselves nearby, pretending to be just another set of guests. For a while, nothing happens. DeLuca circulates, greeting people, trading stories. He accepts a drink, praises the hors d'oeuvres, compliments the view. On the surface, he is charm personified. Underneath, the room is waiting. The band slows to a sultry, insinuating rhythm. Conversations clump into tighter circles. Everyone is aware, on some level, that the evening is building toward something. I try to focus on my work. I correct a server's tray angle. I signal the lighting tech to dim the sconces a fraction. I nod approval at the pastry table. Marcus moves through the space with careful ease, always aware of where I am without appearing to be. His gaze brushes me like a touch and keeps going. I'm at the far end of the room checking the candles along the terrace doors when I feel a presence behind me. My skin prickles. Ms. Dalton, a voice says smoothly. Enjoying the party you built? I turn. DeLuca stands a few feet away, hands clasped behind his back, smile a sliver of white. Nadia lingers 10 paces behind, eyes scanning the room. Our gazes meet for a heartbeat. There's something like apology in hers, quickly masked. Mr. DeLuca, I say, forcing my voice to steady. If you have any concerns about the layout, I'd be happy to. Oh, I have no concerns, he interrupts, stepping closer. Quite the opposite. It's impressive what you've done here. He looks around, making sure he has an audience. He does. People have edged closer, drawn by the tension even if they don't fully understand it. I especially like, he continues, how you've managed to carve out a place for yourself in this world without anyone noticing whose blood is under the floorboards. My mouth goes dry. Excuse me, I say. I need to. His hand shoots out, curling around my forearm. Stay, he says lightly, but his grip is iron. You're the guest of honor, after all. Adrian takes a step forward. Another of Marcus's men moves with him. DeLuca's security responds in kind. The room holds its breath. Vincent, Marcus's voice cuts through the murmurs like a blade. Unhand my planner. Your planner, DeLuca repeats, laughing. Is that what we're calling her? He releases me only to slide his hand to the small of my back, propelling me toward the center of the room. Before I can twist away, we're standing on the slightly raised platform where the band set up earlier. The musicians have gone still, instruments dipping. Since our host is too modest to give a speech, DeLuca announces, voice amplified by the curved ceiling, I thought I'd say a few words. Keira, Marcus says, warning in his tone. I can't move. Not without making a scene. Not without confirming to everyone how rattled I am. Tonight, DeLuca says, we gather to witness something rare. Our dear Marcus here, patron saint of cold calculations, has decided to indulge in a little sentiment. He squeezes my hip. He's even brought a Valentine. Laughter ripples, uneasy. Marcus steps forward, but one of his own men subtly blocks him, waiting for his signal. If he moves too soon, too violently, he proves DeLuca's point. DeLuca leans toward me, breath hot against my ear. Don't worry, he murmurs. This isn't about you. Not really. You're just the mirror. He straightens, addressing the crowd. For those of you who don't know, he says, this lovely creature is Keira Dalton, event coordinator, architect of this beautiful evening, and daughter of the man who stole millions from some of the very people in this room. Gasps low and sharp. I feel my face go cold. Now, he says, wagging a finger. Don't blame her. She didn't sign the checks or falsify the reports. She just inherited the consequences, as we all do in this line of work. He paces slowly, savoring the attention. Here's the interesting part, he continues. When her father's world collapsed, there were loose ends, unhappy investors, unpaid debts. People looked around, wondering where to send their anger. Some of us, he places a hand on his chest with exaggerated modesty, chose to help direct that energy in profitable directions. I swing to Marcus. But not Marcus, DeLuca says. No, our friend here did something very unusual. He protected her, anonymously, paid for her mother's medical bills, smoothed her credit, whispered into the right ears to make sure her little business didn't get crushed before it took its first steps. He spreads his hands. Romantic, isn't it? He says. The butcher's boy saving the fallen princess from the fire he helped feed. Every word is a match struck over gasoline. My carefully constructed invisibility disintegrates. I can feel eyes on me from every direction. Curious, calculating, some openly contemptuous. They're not just seeing me. They're seeing the scaffolding underneath my life, the invisible supports I never asked for. Of course, DeLuca continues. Nothing in our world is ever truly altruistic. We all invest where we anticipate returns. And what greater return than a woman who owes her entire second life to you? He squeezes my shoulder, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Tell me, Keira, he purrs. Did you know? Did he tell you how often he watched you from a distance? How many times he moved pieces to keep your little agency afloat? Enough. Marcus's voice cracks like a whip. He's moved closer without my noticing, his expression a mask of cold fury. DeLuca smiles. Or perhaps you found out more recently, he says, when he decided to drag you into the very world he supposedly shielded you from. When he turned you into his Valentine, his weakness, his favorite little display of power. He turns, amplifying his voice for the room. Look at her, he says, standing there in her pretty dress, believing she climbed here on her own 2 feet, not realizing she's been a bargaining chip in our negotiations for years. Humiliation burns up my throat. Stop it, I say through clenched teeth. Oh, he arches a brow. You'd like to speak for yourself? He shoves a microphone into my hand I didn't see him pick up. The room tilts. I have a sudden, vivid memory of myself at 23, standing outside a courthouse while cameras flashed and reporters shouted my last name. They asked if I knew what my father had done, if I was sorry, if I'd help make it right. Back then, I stayed silent, choking on shame. Something in me refuses to do that again. Yes, I say into the mic, voice shaking but audible. My father did terrible things. He ruined lives. I've never pretended otherwise. A murmur runs through the crowd. I didn't know who was moving money behind the scenes to keep me alive when everything collapsed. I continue. I didn't know who decided my mother deserved her last rounds of treatment, or who leaned on which landlord or bank officer. I just knew that when I fell, someone I'd never met pushed a net under me. I look at Marcus. I know now it was him. His jaw tightens. And yes, I say, lifting my chin, men like him and Vincent built the machinery my father used. They profited from the cleanup as much as the mess. That's how this world works. That's the cost of living in it. I lower the mic slightly, pulse thundering. But don't, I say, eyes locking onto DeLuca's, ever mistake someone else's investments for my debt. His smile falters just a fraction. I owe my father nothing, I say. I owe you nothing. And whatever I choose to owe Marcus is mine to decide, not yours to weaponize. The silence that follows is thick, loaded. DeLuca's pleasant mask slips. He steps closer, grabbing my wrist hard enough to crush bone. You think you can stand here and lecture me, little girl? He hisses, low enough that only I and those closest hear. You've been living in our shadows your entire life. Don't forget who turned on the lights. Fear flashes hot, but anger burns hotter. Let her go. Marcus's voice is ice. This time he doesn't wait for a signal. He moves. He doesn't rush. He doesn't shove people aside. He walks. The crowd parts for him like the Red Sea. By the time he reaches the platform, his face is carved stone. He steps up, closing the distance between us in 3 strides. Take your hand off her, he says to DeLuca, each word precise. Vincent laughs, but there's a brittleness to it now. Or what? He asks. You'll break our long-standing peace because the girl you've been grooming doesn't like my tone? Marcus smiles. It's a terrifying expression, sharp and empty. I already broke it, he says, the moment you picked up that brick. Realization flickers in DeLuca's eyes. You can't afford. Marcus moves. 1 second, DeLuca's hand is on my wrist. The next, Marcus has his arm twisted back at an angle that makes my stomach flip. There is a brief, awful resistance. Then a sickening crack. DeLuca screams. The sound cuts through the room like a siren. The guards surge, weapons half drawn, but Marcus's men are already in position. Guns discreetly visible, eyes flat. They don't point them. They don't need to. The message is clear. Marcus releases DeLuca's ruined arm. The older man cradles it, face gone gray, breath coming in harsh pants. Without looking at him again, Marcus turns to me. His hand finds the small of my back, pulling me against his side. My hand still holds the microphone, knuckles white. Enough games, he says, his voice carrying easily even without amplification. Apparently, clarity is required. He looks out at the assembled power brokers of Manhattan, his gaze sweeping the room with deliberate slowness. This is my Valentine, he says, indicating me. This is my woman, a ripple sharp as a cut. She carries shame that isn't hers, he continues, debt she didn't incur. A name she didn't choose. She has spent 3 years trying to rebuild a life in a city that would have been very happy to watch her drown. And some of you, his gaze hardens, helped hold her head under. Shifts, guilt, defensiveness. But she is here, he says, because she chose to be. Not because any of us pulled her strings. Not because I moved a few pieces to make the landing softer. She is here because she refused to stay down. His hand squeezes my waist once, grounding. If anyone here, he says, voice dropping to something deadly, ever touches her, looks at her wrong, or speaks her name without reverence, I will spend the rest of my life making sure they understand what that costs. Are we clear? No one speaks. He isn't shouting. He isn't gesturing wildly. He just stands there, holding me, radiating a kind of quiet, terrifying conviction that feels more dangerous than any threat I've ever heard. Across the room, eyes meet, calculations adjust. Some men nod, tiny movements of surrender. Others look away, unwilling to challenge him directly. The silence is indeed absolute. Adrian steps forward, speaking into a communicator clipped inside his jacket. 2 guards move to either side of DeLuca. Escort Mr. DeLuca to the car, Marcus says, and make sure our mutual friends are informed that he tripped on his own ego. There are a few strained chuckles. As they guide Vincent toward the exit, he twists once, glaring at me over his shoulder. This isn't over, he snarls. No, Marcus agrees. It's just over for you. The doors close behind them. The band, at some invisible signal, begins to play again. Something soft, unobtrusive, an attempt to smooth the jagged edges of the moment. Conversation resumes in halting bursts. But everything has changed. People avoid looking at me directly at first, like I'm a light source they're not sure will burn. Then slowly they adjust. Some incline their heads respectfully when I pass. Others keep their distance, as if proximity might be misinterpreted. I am no longer invisible. I am marked. After an hour, the party begins to thin. Important people murmur excuses about early flights and prior commitments. Staff move with practiced efficiency, clearing glasses, extinguishing candles. Eventually, it's just us, me, Marcus, a skeleton crew of his most trusted men, who melt away one by one at some signal I don't see until we're alone in the flickering ruins of the evening. I stand by the terrace doors, staring out at the city. The glass shows me a ghost of my reflection superimposed over the skyline. Dark hair pinned up, makeup smudged, dress still perfect in all the ways that don't matter. I feel unmoored. For 3 years I hid. Tonight, hiding became impossible in a matter of minutes. Arms slip around my waist from behind. You're shaking, Marcus murmurs against my hair. I'm fine, I say automatically. Oh, we're back to that, he says wryly. I exhale, leaning back into him. I don't know what I am, I admit. Angry, relieved, exposed, terrified, all of it. That sounds about right, he says. First time someone tears down the walls you've built, it's never clean. I twist in his arms to face him. Did you know he was going to do that? Ask. All of it. The speech. The spectacle. I suspected he'd try something public, he says. Vincent loves an audience. His jaw tightens. I wasn't sure how far he'd go. And you let me walk into it anyway. Pain flares in his eyes. I let you choose, he says quietly. I told you you could walk away. Knowing I wouldn't, I counter. Yes, he says simply. The honesty stings more than any lie could have. So you used me, I say, voice low, as bait. His grip on my waist tightens. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise, he says. You were the piece he wanted to move. I used that because I needed the room to see what happens when someone tries to hurt what's mine. What I am, I say, is tired of being a piece on other people's boards. His gaze softens. I know, he says, and I'm sorry that tonight required that of you. Silence stretches between us, heavy and complicated. I hesitate, searching for the word. Relieved. Surprise flickers across his face. I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop since the first article about my father, I say, always wondering when someone would drag me into the light, when the whispers would turn into shouts again. Now it's happened. In the worst possible way, maybe, but at least it's done. You'd rather be visible than waiting to be exposed, he says. Yes, I say. At least now I know exactly what they're seeing. He studies me for a long moment. You were extraordinary, he says softly. The way you spoke, the way you refused to let him define you. I shrug, suddenly self-conscious. I was shaking so hard I thought I might pass out. That's the point, he says. Courage isn't lack of fear. It's doing the thing anyway. I didn't do it for you, I say. Not all of it. I know, he says. That's why it matters. Heat creeps up my throat. I meant what I said up there, he adds, his voice dropping. About you being my woman, my Valentine. That wasn't performance. I know, I whisper. Do you? He swallows. For the first time since I've known him, he looks genuinely unsure. Do you hate me for what I did tonight? I think about it. I hate that you made choices about my life without me. I say. Years ago. I hate that you watched me fall and decided when and where to cushion the landing. My voice softens. But tonight, I exhale. Tonight, I think you just chose a side in a war that was going to happen with or without me. He nods slowly. I'm not naive, I add. I know you did it for strategic reasons as much as emotional ones. Making an example of him, reshaping the pecking order, all of that. But you also did it because of me. Yes, he says. Because I love you. The words hang there, heavy and impossible. He doesn't say them like a man offering a bouquet. He says them like a confession pulled from somewhere he doesn't visit often. I love you, he repeats, more quietly now. I'm sorry I fell in love with you before asking permission. A laugh chokes out of me, half-sob. That's not how it works, I say. You don't ask. It just happens. That's what terrifies me, he admits. I reach up, fingers brushing the ink along his throat. I love you too, I say, heart pounding. God help me. I tried not to. I told myself I was just grateful or fascinated or suffering from some kind of adrenaline poisoning. But there it is. His eyes close for a beat, as if absorbing the impact of my words. When they open again, they're softer than I've ever seen them. Come with me, he says, voice rough. He leads me down the hall, past the study, past the guest rooms I've never stepped into. At the end is a door I recognize only from glimpses. Dark wood, simple handle. His bedroom. He pauses with his hand on the knob, searching my face. This is the part, he says quietly, where you're allowed to say no. I know, I say, and I'm not going to. His breath leaves him in a rush. The room beyond is big but not cavernous. Dark walls, a low platform bed, a few pieces of understated art. No ostentatious chandeliers or gold leaf. Feels private, real. He closes the door behind us, shutting out the remnants of the night. What happens next isn't the wild, frantic collision I half expected. The slower, stripped of the performance we both wear like armor in the world outside. He unzips my dress with careful hands, eyes searching my face for any hesitation. When I step out of it, goosebumps rise along my skin. Not from the chill, but from the weight of his gaze. You're sure? He murmurs. Yes, I say. Ask again and I might start overthinking. He smiles, brief and crooked, then leans in to kiss me. This kiss is different from the one in the study. Less about staking a claim, more about memorizing. His hands map the lines of my body with reverence I didn't expect from a man who moves through life like everything is expendable. He undresses with efficient precision, and suddenly all that ink I've glimpsed in fragments is revealed. A raven across one shoulder blade, wings spread. Intricate script along his ribs in a language I don't read. Scars interrupting patterns here and there, pale against tan skin. They all have stories, he says when he catches me tracing a jagged line near his hip. You'll tell me someday, I reply. Yes, he says. Someday. In bed, he's gentle. Not in a tentative way, there is nothing tentative about him. But in the way he constantly calibrates his strength, watching my reactions, adjusting. It's not about power, not in this space. It's about connection. We move together slowly at first, then with increasing urgency, but there is no rush to conquer. Just two people who have spent too long holding themselves in check, finally letting themselves feel. At some point, I realize I'm crying again, silently this time. He notices instantly, thumb brushing the tears from my cheek. "Did I hurt you?" he asks, alarmed. "No," I say, laughing breathlessly. "That's the problem." He smiles then, something achingly tender. After, we lie tangled in sheets that smell like him, my head on his chest, his fingers idly tracing patterns on my shoulder. The city lights seep in around the edges of the blackout curtains, casting faint slashes of glow across the ceiling. "I don't know what happens now," I admit. "Now," he says, "we sleep. For the first time in weeks, I might actually manage more than an hour." "And tomorrow?" I press. "Tomorrow," he says, "we deal with the fallout. People will talk. Some will test my boundaries. Some will reach out to you, hoping proximity earns them favor." His hand tightens slightly. "We decide together what you want your place in this world to be." "Together," I repeat, savoring the word. "Together," he confirms. Sometime before dawn, I drift off, the steady beat of his heart in my ear. When I wake, pale light is just beginning to brighten the edges of the curtains. For a moment I don't know where I am. Then the events of the previous night crash over me in a rush. The gala, DeLuca, the speech, the crack of bone. Marcus's voice declaring me his Valentine. His arm is still around me, heavy and warm. I extricate myself carefully and pad to the bathroom, catching a glimpse of myself in the mirror on the way. I almost don't recognize the woman looking back. Her hair is a mess, makeup smudged, a faint bruise blooming on her wrist where DeLuca grabbed her. But her eyes are steady. There's a set to her mouth that wasn't there before. Less defensive, more claimed. I wash my face, tame my hair into something presentable, and slip one of Marcus's shirts over my head. It hangs to mid-thigh, swallowing me in cotton and his scent. When I step back into the bedroom, he's awake, propped on one elbow, watching me with an expression that makes my pulse trip. "You look good in my clothes," he says. "Don't get used to it," I reply, but there's no bite in it. He smiles, then sobers. "Are you okay?" he asks. It's the 100th time he's asked me some version of that question since the brick. It's the first time I don't reflexively say I'm fine. "I think I am," I say slowly. "Or I will be. It's a lot." "Yes," he agrees. "It is." He swings his legs over the side of the bed and stands, the morning light catching on the ink along his spine. He pulls on sweats and a t-shirt and gestures toward the hallway. "Come on," he says. "There's something I want to show you." We ride the private elevator down to the garage, where a sleek black car waits. His driver nods, unsurprised. "Where are we going?" Ask. "You'll see," Marcus says. "The city is different at this hour. Softer. Fewer horns, more delivery trucks." We pass my block. I glimpse my building's worn brick facade through the tinted glass and feel a strange disconnect, like I'm looking at someone else's life. We stop first at my office, or what used to be my office. The broken window is boarded over now, neat plywood covering the jagged hole. A discreet security camera winks above the door that wasn't there before. There's a man in a dark coat across the street, sipping coffee and pretending to read a newspaper. "I thought we were evaluating security," Marcus says. "We're upgrading." "They'll know you're watching," I say. "Good," he replies. "It saves time." From there, we drive to a small cafe where I used to sit for hours between meetings, nursing one coffee to justify the table. The barista does a double take when she sees who's with me, but recovers quickly, plastering on a professional smile. "Your usual?" she asks me. "Yes," I say, surprised she remembers. "And whatever he wants." "Black," Marcus says. We drink at a corner table. People glance over, eyes widening slightly, some whispering behind their cups. No one approaches. How does it feel? He asks, watching me watch them. Strange, I admit. Before, I spent so much energy trying not to be noticed. Now, I shrug. Now they're noticing, but not the way I always feared. They're not seeing my father's crimes first. They're seeing me, he says. And me, I correct. In relation to you, it's not entirely comfortable. But it's not entirely awful either. He nods, as if that's the answer he expected. Visibility is its own kind of armor, he says. People are less likely to take potshots at what they know I'm watching. And if I want to step out of your line of sight? Ask. Then we build you your own, he says. Your own networks. Your own shields. This isn't about you being an accessory, Keira. I meant what I said. I want you to decide what role you play. From the cafe, we drive to a small, unassuming storefront in Midtown. The windows are dark, the sign above the door simple. A jeweler's name in understated script. Inside, the air smells like velvet and metal polish. Glass cases display rings, necklaces, watches that probably cost more than my entire student debt. An older man with kind eyes and a tape measure around his neck emerges from the back. Marcus, he says, smiling. You finally decided. Something like that, Marcus replies. He nods toward me. This is Keira. The jeweler's gaze softens as he takes me in. Ah, he says. The reason, then. He opens a case and lifts out a small velvet tray. Nestled inside is a ring, simple but not modest. A band of white gold, set with a line of dark red stones that catch the light like garnets or rubies, flanked by smaller diamonds that glitter coldly. It's not an engagement ring, Marcus says, watching my face for reaction. Not yet. I'm not arrogant enough to assume you're ready for that. But in our world, he hesitates. People look for markers, signals. I want them to understand, without question, what you are to me. What am I? I ask, voice very quiet. Mine, he says simply. By your choice, not my decree. I want everyone to know that. Not eventual, not someday. Now. Emotion swells in my chest, thick and complicated. This is a lot, I say, laughing shakily. So is everything between us, he says. I'm done pretending otherwise. The jeweler clears his throat delicately. May I? He takes my left hand and slides the ring onto my fourth finger. It fits perfectly, cool metal warming quickly against my skin. In the mirror behind the counter, I catch a glimpse of us. His tall, inked frame in dark clothes, my slighter form in his shirt, the ring a bright, defiant spark between us. I expect to feel trapped. Instead, I feel anchored. We step back out into the street, the winter air sharp in my lungs. People glance at us. Their eyes drop to my hand, widen fractionally, then dart away. Respect, fear, curiosity. For the first time in 3 years, I don't want to disappear under their gaze. We spend the rest of the day weaving through pieces of my old life. The park bench where I used to eat dollar pizza, the free museum nights I waited in line for, the bookstore where the owner let me linger over art books I couldn't afford. In each place, Marcus stands slightly apart, watching, present but not intruding, as if understanding that I need to see these spaces through new eyes. With him at my side. By dusk, we're back at his penthouse, standing on the terrace as the city lights flicker on one by one, a constellation of human intention. Wind whips my hair around my face. He stands behind me, arms wrapped around my waist, chin resting on my shoulder. Do you regret it? He asks quietly. How we started. What last night became. I think about the girl who slipped through hotel ballrooms like a ghost, terrified of anyone saying her name out loud. I think about the woman standing here now, bare ring finger now adorned, body humming with equal parts fear and fierce, stubborn love. No, I say honestly, I wouldn't change any of it. The awful parts brought me here. It's a dangerous way to think, he says. So is loving you, I reply. He laughs softly, the sound vibrating against my back. Fair, he concedes. We stand in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city pulse below us. Marcus, I say, you know this isn't a fairy tale ending, right? There's still DeLuca, your other enemies, people who will use me to get to you. I know, he says, but here's the difference now. They know I know, and they know what I'm willing to do about it. He turns me in his arms to face him. You're my Valentine, he says, voice low. Not just tonight, not just for show. In every room I walk into, in every calculation I make, there will be a Keira variable from now on. My throat tightens. And you, I say, are mine. He smiles then, slow and real. The last thing I see before I close my eyes and he kisses me is the city reflected in his gaze. Dangerous, glittering, ours. If you've made it all the way here, through the danger and the confession and the claiming, thank you for staying with this story. I'd love to know, if you were in Keira's shoes, would you choose the safety of invisibility or the risk of being seen and loved by someone like Marcus? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story pulled you in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.